Have any hats in here? This isn't the South. You won't get away with that.
It's recording, by the way.
Oh. Hi. No, is it really?
Yes, it's recording.
Oh.
So, good afternoon, Mr. Rivera. I'm happy to have you back in here. How's everything going?
You know it's going good, I guess.
Okay, great. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few things with you in terms of, just going back over your file. I'm just going to flip through some of my notes and just, confirm some facts with you, okay? Okay, great. So, here we go. Sorry, this is from another case. Okay, so here we go. So you have your rental property.
Yes.
And, you lived there for a while. It was your parents, and you were renting the downstairs to your friend Chris, and the upstairs to Bill and Dre.
Yes.
And their dog Laddie. And there was a fire. It was the lint trap wasn't cleaned properly or something of the sort. And there was some damage. And then shortly after, Chris had left you a note and said, I'm leaving for now. I'm staying at my mom's. Left the key and took off. And you're, from what I understand, you're trying to figure out, what your responsibilities are as the landlord.
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. So, all right. So I do need some additional information about. Let's start with Chris's duties at the apartment. Is that ringing a bell for you?
Yeah, he was supposed to clean up the lint trap, deal with the shutters, blinds, and the windows. He's supposed to mow, take the trash out, just normal.
So was it Chris's responsibility to clean the lint trap and the hose, or only the lint trap?
I think I only told him the lint trap, but I could be wrong. I'm not for sure what I said. I know it was at least the lint trap, but it might have been the hose as well. Does that matter?
Kind of, depending on whether or not it was Chris's responsibility to clean the hose, because it seems that the fire marshal tends to think that the excess lint built up in the hose could also be part of the problem that was a catalyst for the fire. So
Okay, but why does that matter?
well, you see, if we were to get Chris to repay for the damages caused, based on his lack of duty. And I know, looking for damages isn't really the goal here. But the thing about it is, I'm not sure that we can have Chris leave. It's not the way the laws are formed around this issue. There's specific procedures that need to be followed when you're turning over an apartment from one person to another. And so there's a summary process that needs to be followed. And here, it seems pretty clear that, the summary process wasn't followed because, we didn't go to, follow the proper eviction protocols. Now, there are exceptions. For example, if the client abandons or if your tenant were to abandon the premises.
What he did.
So, according to the law, it's kind of in a gray area as to whether or not he factually abandoned the premises.
Would you say taking your clothes and not paying rent and just leaving the key count as abandonment?
I would definitely be inclined to agree with you, but unfortunately, it's not my opinion that matters. It's the jury or the judge would preside over the case. If it did go to trial or litigation rather, and just to be frank with you, I don't think litigation's a good idea in this scenario, because I don't think it would turn out very well for you because of the way the law is drawn up. The law, unfortunately for, landlords like you, is overly protective of tenants.
So what you're telling me is I can't kick him out.
You might not be able to kick him out. I think our best
I can
bet.
or I can't. There's no in
Well,
between.
it's possible that we can get Chris to agree to leave. So it's always a possibility that we could have Chris leave. Now, if Chris does stay in the apartment, it's important that I'm able to calculate all the damages accurately. So that's why I bring you back to the whether or not it was his duty to, maintain the hose as well as the lint trap.
But then I've still got my other tenant who I've signed a lease to move in already. What happens there? I mean, if you're telling me I can't kick him out, how wouldn't I then be liable to my other tenants?
Well, technically, the lease isn't executed until you turn over the premises to the new tenant. So
then I'd be saying, well, I never turned whatever you just said. I never executed it. So then I couldn't rent it out, and I told my other tenants that they could move someone in that they knew. So I'm gonna end up having bad blood there, and they're gonna want to leave.
So, we did actually have one of the associates follow up with Bill and Dre. And, Bill and Dre did mention that they were, pretty torn because, Chris is their friend too. And, obviously they're concerned about their friend Nafis. But, it's really an ugly situation. I mean, it's definitely a viable option to have, Chris agree to leave the premises.
Especially because the other tenant's going to be a much more competent long-term tenant. They're going to make good money consistently. I'm not going to have to worry about that money. Chris could just up and leave again.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And, if it were to happen that Chris were to stay in the apartment, I definitely recommend you execute, a written lease agreement.
But should no non-written lease agreement allow me to terminate it at any time? And
Unfortunately,
if they leave, I mean, if there's no set terms on when they're going to stay or when they're going to leave, then technically, if they leave, there's no reason for the lease to continue.
Right, and that definitely makes a lot of sense when you think about it in terms of him leaving. But unfortunately for us here, Chris didn't actually leave. You packed up all his stuff and put it in a storage unit, all of his furniture. So by him not taking, all of the big things and him only taking, his clothes or, a couple suitcases, as Bill and Leandre said, Bill and Leandre were under the impression that Chris was just taking a vacation. They had no idea that, Chris was leaving. So that definitely doesn't look good for us here, It definitely is. Right, in case you need to get in case.
I have my own set of keys. There's no reason for
Sure.
his key. He left his key. He just abandoned it.
Yeah. I understand that, but unfortunately, it's not up to you or I to make the substantive laws. We just kind of have to try to live underneath them and try to do as best as we can to, come up with a good solution while following the laws. Additionally, I do have to mention some things to you. So just in terms of the process for proper eviction, in the future, I'm going to have my legal secretary send you over, some copies of the pertinent documents containing the landlord-tenant laws. Actually, I think I have a copy here that you can take a look at. Let me just find it here. So right here, section 5 here, you can't actually in real life take this, but these are the laws around landlord-tenant. And now don't be too caught up with the jargon, but I will send you, the factual laws pertaining to it because, it's important for you to know as long as you're a landlord, these are laws that you should know. Okay, and I understand it might it might all just look like legalese. And I don't want to drown you with, extraneous laws and, legal jargon. But, it's important that you also understand that, the complaints that Chris made, and I know before you had said that they were, BS claims, basically, or
Do you
BS,
remember how long I told you he was gone for before he came back?
I'm not quite sure. No, I didn't. I actually didn't understand that he had come back to the apartment. I thought that he just kind of like dropped by and was like,
Well,
"Hey, what the?"
that's what I mean. The only reason I ask is because looking at this, he did make an express statement that he was leaving.
How long he was gone for?
I might have forgotten to tell you. I'll have to look at my records. But he did make an express statement saying that he was going to leave the specified date. He said, whatever the date it was, he dated it. So.
Did he say I'm leaving?
Yeah, he said I'm leaving. I'm going to mom's.
Okay, because also it was difficult for me too because the letter that you had provided for me, you had actually also accidentally taken with you, I think, because I didn't have that in my records.
I am sorry.
That's okay. That's probably my fault, but
that's the only reason I asked, because he voluntarily left. He didn't come back. He said he's leaving, and there was a date on it.
Right. Now it's important to note that this is the narrow exception that we're falling into. Now, the other substantive laws that govern the situation here have to do with what you can and can't do with your tenant's property. So, for example, you may not remove property from your tenant's apartment. You could actually be held criminally liable. So, it's possible that if Chris wants to raise hell, it's possible that you could get a warrant served to you for conversion of his property to yours by taking his and moving it into a storage unit. Now, obviously, we had discussed you put it in there, and it's still his property, and you just want him to recover it and get it out of there, so you don't have to pay the storage fees. But it doesn't look good. Also, it's not. It could be viewed as retaliatory as well, because you had mentioned that Chris made complaints about how the apartment was, super drafty, and about the dog upstairs that he had problems with, and you had mentioned that you didn't give any merit to those in those complaints, and then that led to him kind of taking a sabbatical from staying at the apartment, and it looks like he might have a good claim for saying that he complained, and and then he took off because you didn't do anything, and then in retaliation you took all of his stuff and moved it out and moved somebody else in. You kind of see how that might look from an outside perspective looking in.
Yes, and it's a little horseshit.
All right, well, I'm sorry that the laws aren't what you think they ought to be.
It's not that they are what I think they ought to be. It's the fact that he made those complaints, but he knew what he was going into. He knew they had a dog. He was fine with the dog for months. He knew that going downstairs, he was going to get less rent charged to him every month because he was doing some extra things around the house. So that less rent should then allow him to pay a little more in heating bills. Things are going to happen. You're at the top of the house, heat rises. That's logic. If you're at the bottom of a building, you're not going to have as cheap of heating bill as someone who's above you.
Right, I definitely understand.
So it's not retaliatory. It's the fact that he didn't think about everything he did before he did it. He threw a temper tantrum and ran out the door.
Right, and I think that's definitely something you need to consider moving forward, because if you don't give merit to your tenants' complaints, even if they are your friend, and even if you think that they hold no merit or they're irrational, you have to at least hear them out, acknowledge them, or else you might end up in a situation like this all over again. neither of us, wants to be spending your money here. We just want to make you money. That's the goal here, is to make you money from this investment property, not to, spend your money on attorneys and, spend money on storage units and evicting people here. So what I want to do is I just want to go over some options that we might have here. So there's three big options that we have here. So first, you go rent to Nafis, Bill and Leandre's friend here. Next, you can continue to rent to Chris. God bless you. And finally, you could just not rent to anybody. Find a completely new tenant.
But
and,
that can't even be
status.
possible according to what you're telling me.
Well, it could be possible.
How could it be possible? Because if that's the case, then I just want to keep my new tenant that's going in.
Okay, great. So I'm glad you identified this as not a viable option, because honestly, the only reason I put it in there was for Sheila. So it's not a viable option to maintain the status quo.
No.
Okay. Okay, great. So I just want to go over some scenarios. If you rent to Nafis, you really have to face the possibility of litigation with Chris. And, Chris might still be planning to return to the apartment. I haven't, heard from him or any attorney from him. Have you? Okay, so, Chris might be planning to return to the apartment. And, litigation might not go over well. It's going to be expensive. And like I said, it's possible that you can be held criminally liable for entering the premises and taking his property.
But don't I have the right to go into my tenant's property when I see it abandoned? And there is no rent paid?
So of course you have the ability to go into, inspect the premises upon reasonable notification. And I understand, Chris wasn't there at the time and you hadn't received rent, So yeah, you could make a good argument for, I went in and I had cause to do it. But remember, to make that argument, it's going to cost you a lot of money, because we're going to have to go through the whole court process and, battle it out with a judge. Also, there's another claim you can make is infliction of emotional distress. Even if you didn't do it on purpose, even if it wasn't intentional, Chris might have a viable claim for infliction of emotional distress. Painted over like the crazy paintings that he did or whatever, and you removed all his furniture from the apartment, and whether it seems like it's something that could emotionally distress someone or not.
Wouldn't that require me to have knowledge that this would affect him in that way?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, you could have done it negligently, not knowing that it would have affected him.
No.
Yes.
I would love to see the law that says that.
Okay.
But it's a hard case to make.
It is a very hard case to make, and it's an even more expensive one to fight. So here's the infliction of emotional distress. You could see here that negligent infliction of emotional distress is that which is not intended by the defendant, but a reasonable person could have foreseen it would occur by virtue of the defendant's actions.
So
I think that a reasonable person could infer, by you removing your tenant's property and putting it in a storage unit, it's possible that a reasonable person can infer that someone might be emotionally distressed by having all their property moved into a storage unit, especially if they didn't know the storage unit existed.
Yeah, but that goes back to the thing of the fact that he abandoned his stuff there.
I know you're skeptical, Mr. Rivera, Jamie, but it's and I know it's difficult for you to kind of understand and wrap your head around it all, but it is something that is a definite possibility.
So basically what you're telling me is, my option that I want to do is off the table, and I
I'm
need
not
to
telling
rinse
you that
this
at all.
person. It's exactly what it seems like you're
I'm
telling
telling you first, these are the very real consequences that we might have to face
But you're
if
saying
we
I
rent
will
to
have to
Nafis.
face them, essentially.
What do you mean?
Because you're saying if you do this, he will probably do that.
It's possible, but like I had mentioned before, if we go into this and we try to, get Chris to just move out on his own, we could definitely still rent to Nafis, and that would be the goal. Would be if that's what you wanted to do, that would be the goal. Would be to try our darnest to get Chris to agree to move out. And now this is also why I was asking, what exactly his duties were pertaining to the lint trap, because there's a lot of money and damages that can be claimed here. First and foremost, I mean, you never asked him for a security deposit. You charge him less. You know all the things.
So
Know
you're
it all.
essentially wanting me to blackmail him out of into leaving.
No.
By saying,
No.
here's
But if he does stay, I think it would behoove you to try to recover that money, because that's money that he was the superintendent of your property. He was responsible for the maintenance of the washer and dryer. If in fact it was the lint trap as his responsibility for cleaning that did catch on fire, he could be liable for the money to repair the laundry room, at least into its operable state.
So
as it
essentially,
existed before.
An option of doing my option would be tell him, well, you can stay, but I'm going to charge you this much money because of the damages. Or you can leave and I don't charge you this, is what you're telling me.
I'm saying that those would probably be our best plays on both of those options, yes.
Or I keep Chris as a tenant and don't charge him anything for goodwill, so he stays a good friend, is the middle real option.
So it is, I do just want to, remind you that, it's really difficult to litigate a case, especially against somebody that you've been friends with for a long time. And if we do rent to Nafis, or if you rent to Nafis rather, you do face the real possibility of having to, fight this out in court with Chris. Now I'm glad you identified, a good middle option as being, to rent to Chris or allow Chris to continue to rent from you. I am hoping that the attorney for Chris will reach out to me soon, and we'll be able to schedule like a negotiation to try to work this out. Before we go through any litigation or anything like that. I'm really hoping that we could get together with Chris and his attorney, or maybe just us attorneys, and try to just work out a deal. And pretty much what I want to know, if you do allow Chris to come back, I just want to run through this scenario with you too, because I feel like we covered it extensively with Nafis, but we didn't quite cover it so much with Chris. So I think that if you do let him come back, you should execute a written lease agreement. I think that much, because the terms of the lease, especially when you have someone doing all those things for you, they should be definite. You know what I mean? Especially when someone's acting as a superintendent, it should be known that the reduction in rent is in consideration for those duties. And if you don't do those duties, then you owe me money because you didn't. Does that kind of make sense to you? Okay. So, also remember that if Chris comes back, you'll have your superintendent back. So if you rent to Nafis, you're not going to have Nafis, as the handyman of the apartment. So you are going to have to do it, or you're going to have to hire somebody to come by.
But she's paying a lot more
fix all
money.
those things. Yeah, and that's definitely something you could work into a budget if you want to, have her rent. You could definitely, take some of that rental income and invest it in a superintendent for the property. That would definitely that's definitely a good option. Also, um, pitfalls of allowing Chris to come back, I think you identified a little earlier, and I think, you know, they're well spotted, you know. Bill and Gray might be a little ticked off at you for not renting their friend Nafis. And Nafis could also seek legal recourse, you know, on the lease agreement.
Yeah,
now,
she is a lawyer.
Right, but here's where it gets tricky because, you know, the legal recourse that you might face from Nafis has a much lower likelihood of succeeding than the legal recourse that you face from Chris should you rent to Nafis. Does that make sense?
But she's putting all of her eggs in this basket, and I know that. While Chris already moved out and was like, fuck this.
Yeah, I know, and you know, it's really unfortunate that it turned out this way. But that's why I really want to stress to you, you know, the proper procedures for actually evicting somebody. Because, you know, if we had followed the proper procedures here, you know, we might already have Nafis, you know, moved into your apartment, and you know, Chris, you know, living at his mom's full time. But unfortunately, because the proper procedures weren't followed, I think that, you know, we kind of need Chris's permission here to, if we want to rent to Nafis, we kind of need Chris to back out volitionally.
So what would you do if you were me?
Now if I were you, you know, this would be really tough. You know, if I were you, you know, I think one of my main goals would try to be to, you know, reinvigorate my friendship. You know, as far as, you know, following the legal recourse, I think that I'd want to give as much money as I could to my attorney if I were you, which is me, by the way. But I think first and foremost, you know, my main goal would be to, you know, to be friends with Chris at the end of the day, regardless of what I wanted, you know, for the apartment. As far as, you know, who you should rent to, you know, I can't make those decisions for you because at the end of the day, you know, it's your apartment, it's your money.
But basically what you were saying is I should keep my friendship with Chris, and the only way to for sure that is to rent to him. So you basically implied that I should go rent to Chris.
I think right now you're just being a little sticky and putting words in my mouth. But I'm glad you spotted it because, you know, if you let Chris come back, there probably is a higher likelihood that you guys will remain friends. Is that something you even want, or are you already, you know, to hell with this guy? I don't want to.
Well, I mean, he did kind of just leave me high and dry with some rent money, and there was issues that came up because he didn't do his duties.
Right.
I mean, keeping him as a friend is great, but at the same time, I'm running a business there. It's not, well, I'm just going to rent to my friends.
Right, and that rent money is important to you, and you know, I know it is, and I actually wanted to go back through some of the money that he might owe you. So we have in rent, we have about $625 that he owes you because he had paid you. He had missed, you know, the whole 300 of, or how much was it? It's difficult because I had to cut a lot of it out because of the restrictions on the account.
450.
Right. So, you know, what I have is, you know, he owes you about $625 in rent, about $130 on the storage unit. Plus we have, you know, the amount of money you spent painting the apartment, the money it's going to cost to repair the laundry, and even if you could come up with maybe a price that it might cost in order to, if you've gotten an estimate on, you know, repairing the windows, because, you know, I have a feeling that if we do ask Chris, or if you allow Chris to move back in, he's going to demand that those windows get fixed. And now that's something that could come out of the back rent, come out from the storage unit, come out for the amount it'll cost for the laundry units. So I don't think you have to worry about actually investing any of the money you have now into that, but perhaps that's something we could work in out of the money that Chris might owe you. Does that sound good?
But that all goes back to him moving in, if I choose to have him move in.
Right. And you got to remember too, Nafis hasn't been living there yet, and Nafis can make the same complaints as Chris and walk in and be the same poor tenant as Chris and avoid paying rent.
Or I'd have a written contract.
Right, which is why I suggest if you do choose to let Chris come back, I suggest that, we do have a written contract. I also suggest that you have him pay a security deposit as well, by which that you can take funds from the security deposit if he complains, like, oh, my plumbing is, jacked up, my sink, doesn't drain the water fast enough, or, some, seemingly meritless claim, you can say, well, all right, I'm taking the money that you had given me from your, and I'm putting it towards that, and I think that we can, we could work something out there. If we do, with Chris, if we do something like a written agreement from the top.
So I think it'd be a good idea to talk to Chris's attorneys and see where they're at and go from there. If he's going to raise a lawsuit, I would say the best thing to do is move him in. But if he's not going to, I'm going to move in my other tenants.
Okay.
That's really my bottom line. If it's going to turn into a lawsuit, I'm not going to do the legal fees. That's going to cost more than a lot of work. If there's not going to be a lawsuit, well, he can move out and we'll go with her.
Okay. Now, as far as, the costs for the storage unit, the
If he
painting,
moves in, I will go after the costs. If he doesn't, I won't.
So if, I think that if Chris moves in,
I will go after the cost. If he doesn't move in, they'll just go away.
so for the amount of money spent on the storage unit for the 130 and for the amount of money spent painting the apartment, I don't know how much you spent on paint or what have you, or how much time you put into it. But I just want to let you know that these two facets of what he might owe you could be, it's going to be very difficult to recover if you are going to allow him to come back. Because if you do allow him to come back, or if it turns out that he's going to try to sue you or what have you, and you say, all right, then come on back, then the storage unit and the paint would have been deemed unnecessary costs.
But I can still get the missed rent.
Of course, absolutely, and we will get the missed rent
And
in one form or
damage
another,
to the other stuff.
as well as the damage to the other stuff. I just wanted to let you know that your bottom line has to, and I'm going to try my best to get the paint and get the storage unit, but I can't count on the other attorney being that silly to give it to me. And I just want to let you know that it might not be possible to recover that money, but I'm certainly going to try, because I know how much you like your money. Okay, so just want to recap again. So I'm going to go meet with Chris's attorney, and this is probably going to be on Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And what we're going to discuss is, first and foremost, whether or not, like Chris wants, and I'm not going to show my cards by any means. I'm going to discuss with them, whether or not Chris is going to initiate a lawsuit in terms of, intentional or not intentional, excuse me, in terms of infliction of emotional distress, in terms of, the seizing, his property and putting in the storage unit, and, unlawful detainer and entry to the apartment. I'm going to see, and if they do raise those, concerns and threaten the lawsuit, I will allow Chris to, I will negotiate as a starting point of Chris coming back. I just want to go back through, so your bottom line is to avoid litigation.
Yes.
Okay. And again, I just wanted to, advise you on the landlord-tenant laws, because it's really important. So I just want to go through really quick with you and talk about. This is the proper process here for the summary process, okay? And now, it's good that, one of the common reasons that you had, tried to evict was for, breach of rules or regulations other than non-payment and non-payment, because he didn't pay and he also didn't fulfill his duties. So you definitely have the right reasons for evicting him. However, here you can see this is the eviction timeline, and this is what needs to happen. You need to serve a notice to quit to him, and pretty much what that's saying is, you need to pay, or you need to fulfill your end, or else you're out. And because we didn't follow that, like I mentioned before, we look at the exception to that, which is abandonment, and unfortunately, according to the law, he could not have considered to be abandoning the premises because he wasn't gone for the full 2 months. Like I said, I'm going to have some copies, summarized and sent over to you by the paralegal, so you could be a more effective landlord and avoid the costs of coming to see an attorney every time you have a problem tenant. Sound good?
Okay.
All right. All right. 36, perfect time.